Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Tag Talk. This evening I am joined by the team members of November 7, and we wanted to talk about the recent Maryland Mayhem event in America. Now, what we've done previously on other episodes is whenever we've had a new guest on, we've given them 5 minutes slot to give their little brief Nerf story. So I thought we'd start with Joker. On you go.
Excellent. So my name's Joker, or rather my call sign is. My name is classified at the highest possible level of secrets. I've been in the Nerf hobby since about 2018 after Spectre dragged me in going, hey, you've got a bunch of Nerf blasters in your cupboard and you really like laser tag. Want to give this a go? You don't even need to buy darts. And dragged me along to a skate park event in 2018 in Edinburgh. And the rest is kind of a series of increasingly irresponsible financial decisions about kids' toys. Increasingly responsible financial decisions about kids' toys. I have a mortgage now. But no, that's pretty much how I got into the hobby. Mostly in low power PvP, but after 2021, getting more into high power stuff, looking at HVZ, looking at other events further afield than just my back garden in Glasgow. And that's pretty much all there is to say, really. It's one of those things I don't consider it particularly notable, but at the same time, of course I wouldn't because I was there.
Here is where we put image 1, which is us at the first winter Battle of Britain up in Glasgow. This is myself, Joker, and Blue, another member of the team, who is unfortunately not able to join us this evening. That was really the first official outing of Team N7 as it is. And yeah, that's the point where it went from I'm Spectre N7 and I run around and dress up in armor because I'm a nutter to I have more like-minded nutters who also want to run around and play with children's toys whilst dressing as Space Marines.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, although I don't get the chance to dress as a Space Marine very often because of the nature of the events we've been doing, and obviously the limited events in recent months, I've been drilling with rigs that are more combat effective than cosmetic. But yeah, that was winter 2019. No, 2018 had to have been. And that was the first sort of proper event. Because I've got what was the Mark III armor core on at that point. Thus starting the grand tradition of handing off equipment to newer members of the team as we go, so that everything gets a bit of a story behind it. And yeah, because I've went from trying to fight 130 FPS war in an airsoft arena up to having a nice walk in the woods at 300 FPS and having engagements at 40 plus meters and hitting people. And now everything in between, and I never thought I'd be there from just running around in a skate park, donking people with a Kronos.
Angel, you want to go next?
Yeah. So, as heard, my name's Angel and Seven. Actual name also completely classified. Started out nerfing, I think, in 2017. I can't remember exactly which Grumman Nerf game it was, but it was one of their events in Farsley, Leeds. Rolled up there, 16 years of age, with a long shot that I'd modified with scraps that I found in a parts bin somewhere in a strife, and was completely and utterly wiped out and outgunned, and took that as both a challenge and an insult. Through trying to develop with that, linking up with people at the game as the months went on, realizing I'd kind of like a team with this, because flying solo sucks. I accidentally ran into Spectre N7 at one of the Grimont Nerf events at a later point, and then linked up again at Battle of Britain Nerf 3 2019.
Yes, Bob 3. The weird thing is, I have video footage of my first interaction with Angel, but my first interaction with Angel was mostly shooting at him. And then they arrived at Battle of Britnerf with blasters were mostly set up for 130 games, and the Battle of Britnerf had a 300 cap. And I'm like, at that point, I'm heavily involved in the crew auxiliary and the whole more fun for everyone idea. And I'm like, this is somebody who I know is also involved in the auxiliary. Is somebody who I, based on the limited interactions I have had with them online, is somebody I am willing to trust with my equipment. So here is my FDL2. Do not break it.
And I didn't break it, and it was great. Then I kind of got hooked on working with a team thing. And then Kill Factory 3, I think. Again, I don't remember. It was years ago.
That is image 2 in the list I've given you, David. But yes, this is me again, Blue. Again, starting the tradition of never being able to get more than 3 members of Team N7 in one place at any one time.
Yep. Granted, you'd be forgiven for thinking that wasn't me in that image, because clearly it looks nothing like me. It's far too slim and far too full of aspirations in life, but...
I mean, you can tell it's not you, they're smiling.
Precisely. I have no idea who you found in that image.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, because I completely failed to consider the crew auxiliary, because... I can't remember which came first, me joining the crew auxiliary or Team N7 becoming a thing.
Team N7 existed before the auxiliary, but they kind of were very, like, there's definitely a very close timeline link between between doing the auxiliary thing, which also really does stress the whole idea of operating with other people that you know well to be a force multiplier, was definitely one of the driving forces behind me going, right, okay, I'm actually going to make this a formal thing. And that very neatly brings us to Reaper.
Yeah, so I got into the hobby in fall of 2018 when I started college at Purdue University. Tag, which I had an older brother who played in, which got me into it. Through that club, which does humans versus zombies, capture the flag, PvP stuff, I got involved with the more hobbyist side, watching YouTubers, which got me into the crew auxiliary and led to me meeting all of these lovely people. That led to me going to more events, different invitationals in Pennsylvania, and then eventually Maryland Mayhem, where I got to meet the rest of the N7s in person for the first time. And where I got patched in.
So the first time that we all got to play together as a group was not actually in Maryland Mayhem. It was a UMBC HVZ invitational. It was their first invitational post the pandemic. It wasn't the big event that MM is now. That was something that was organized by a member of the auxiliary, basically to get as many of the people that he really wanted to play in one place at once. And over the course of that day's play, there were a number of moments where Reaper distinguished themselves, both from a player perspective and friend perspective. I'm going to try and not make them cry. And this will be where the image of this is where Kai is kneeling and we are holding off the horde while Kai is what is called rooted in UMBC parlance. Basically, they cannot move. So it doesn't make them a zombie, but it makes them extremely vulnerable to being tagged and turned into a zombie. So we're providing supporting fire to make sure that doesn't happen. Then at the end of that game, I kind of pulled Joker and Angel aside and went, I think that this person should join the team. What do you guys think? And I think both, I don't even think I'd finished my sentence before they were both going, yes, absolutely. and that's kind of when Reaper joined Team N7. We then did the first Maryland Mayhem, and that's where we're all doing the full uniform, the red tactical vests, the full gear, full loadout. Image here, please, David. And that was the first Maryland Mayhem. Again, this was a full deployment with the Crew Auxiliary with Captain Xavier, and as all of us are involved in the NCO core of that, we kind of rocked up and provided a lot of support for that and a lot of the organizational logistics, not just for us, but for the wider auxiliary in terms of organization, setting up squads, things like that. That really does fall on Reaper and Joker as the logistics NCOs. And so we were there to help with that and also to play the game, which was a lot of fun. This year, this is where kind of the difference between Team N7, which is those of us who I have patched in, there's a closeness to the four of us, and to the others who have the patch that isn't necessarily like I didn't want to just be giving the patch out willy-nilly. There's a found family aspect to it that I really wanted to protect. But there were also people that we really wanted to play with and to do the kind of tactical play that we do with the auxiliary, but the auxiliary weren't deploying this year. So we were like, right, okay, how do we as a group create a wider group that isn't Team N7, but is able to do what we do? And the idea of November 7 Tactical Solutions was kind of Angels. The idea of, hey, wouldn't it be cool if? And so at this point, we now have a wider kind of support network of players who we like, know, and trust, who wear the shirt, but aren't necessarily members who have the patch. I guess, does that make sense? Have I effectively communicated the difference?
Yeah. It's the same. It makes absolute sense. So I think that also nicely covers everything that I wanted to cover in the topic to let anybody who's not familiar with N7 to get a sort of running start as to where what are all coming from there, and how it is that you came to be. Now, the main body of this particular show is going to be your exploits at Maryland Mayhem. So I think we're probably best actually explaining to any viewers there what is Maryland Mayhem. So I think we said Reaper was going to take this particular slot.
So the first UMBC Invitational we all attended. Friday they did a convention. Saturday they did an HVZ, and Sunday was supposed to be another HVZ Invitational hosted by a nearby school. That for various reasons didn't happen, and instead they had the 11th hour PvP battle, which led to the sort of idea of, hey, we should just do this. This is just a good idea. So the first Maryland Mayhem under that title, and then this most recent Maryland Mayhem, were 3 days of basically every flavor of Nerf you can get in the States. They had a competitive tournament on Friday, combined with a convention. They had a full traditional HVZ Invitational on Saturday all day long. And then Sunday they did a PvP battle. The first Maryland Mayhem, I want to say that was outside in not a park, but basically a big field that they had set up cover in. And then this year they hosted it in the same soccer dome gym that they did the tournament in. I think that's about it. 3 days, all sorts of Nerf. Good time.
Good.
Yeah, and it's also important to note that also 11th Hour is a joint venture between the three sort of PvP groups in the Baltimore area. So you've got Southern Maryland House of Nerf, DMV Nerfers, can't remember what DMV stands for, and the other one whose name I forget.
Southern Maryland House of Nerfers and
Maryland Nerf Herders.
For what it's worth, the entire Maryland Mayhem is now a combined effort between what is called the Maryland Foam Alliance, which is basically they have those three groups, and they're like, we're all playing this game in varying ways, and rather than us trying to compete against each other for space or time or people's attention, why don't we just all work together and try and build the community into something really cool? And I think that's a really kind of positive outlook.
Yeah,
And that's
great.
then further led into the World Foam Alliance, which is something that we're going to be another kind of podcast / video where we're going to be talking as a team about our experience traveling internationally for Nerf. So there'll be a link to that in the description. You should check that out as well.
Of course, naturally. So the sort of next topic, if everybody's cool with that, was going to be the actual logistics of organising the trip. See, in the sort of UK, we are quite far apart. I think, realistically speaking, there's sort of 4 or 5 active players in Scotland. There's some lesser active players, but there's sort of 4 or 5, players who are prepared to travel distances to attend events. And that can easily be 5 or 6 traveling hours each way. So that in itself, going down to a 4 or 5 hour event, can be quite an excursion, but it's nothing compared to organising traveling abroad to another country. So why don't you talk us through the sort of logistics that you have to go through to make something like this actually happen, Spectre?
Front and center, Joker N7, who is my logistics bod.
Yep.
Tag
so
Tagging Joker then.
So the thing about traveling internationally is there's a couple of advantages to this. There's a couple of disadvantages. Obviously, as you know, we all sort of play in the Leeds area. You and I have come down to events regularly, and that's sort of our baseline, as it were, is like sort of 5 hours travel there, 4 hour game, 5 hours travel back, plus stopping off for pizza afterwards.
Yeah.
And there's some advantages to traveling internationally, first of which is nobody has to drive. So you can use the time on the plane to your advantage, either by sleeping or by watching Top Gun. Those are the only 2 options. This one bullied me into watching Top Gun on the way back last year. And I can safely say that watching Top Gun for the first time at 3 a.m. on an overnight flight is definitely one of the best times to watch it. But yeah, so in terms of logistics, traveling between the US and the UK, traveling between the UK and the US is relatively easy. There's 1,000,001 flight options. Obviously, you've got the big all-star London Heathrow with 1 million flights a day to anywhere you could possibly want. But coming up from Scotland, the options are understandably a bit more limited. While there is, a direct flight to Newark daily from Edinburgh Airport, for example, that's with an airline that the ticket cost is prohibitively high. So a lot of that was actually just looking at competitive flights, looking at itineraries, looking at luggage policies, because of course we need to fly with all of our kit, and trying to figure out what makes it worth it for us. And it's only after we sort of spent the best part, when we found out we were doing UMBC 2022. Okay. Where is my phone? Just so it doesn't blep on the recording. So I just realized my phone wasn't silenced. It's bad drills on my part. Where is the silence? Oh yeah, I'm forgetting this phone. Silence and sound are the same button. But yeah, it was much more. In 2022 was actually a lot more challenging because we still had the restrictions of Doom to contend with. So the very first time we did it, we were doing stuff like pre-testing the day before. We were doing stuff like having to restrict social gatherings in advance, because if you were declared symptomatic to that thing that everybody had, you couldn't fly. Just straight up couldn't do it. And that was an added stress. So all I can say is it's got comparatively easier as times went on. But that's also discovering a cost-effective way of doing it through making a connection through Dublin, where we could save the better part of £300 a head going to the States, and also doing customs 2 hours into our 14-hour journey, which was a massive stress relief. Because actually getting to the States is easy. It's dealing with all of the shenanigans to get to the States is the difficult bit. It's much more just having to answer awkward questions at the border. Who are you? Why are you coming through here? The first time we went out, I was stuck at the border for 20 minutes as they're going through my line of like as we're going through my line of work. The fact I don't know what my own height is, so they have to measure me. I have to go through my entire financial history. I have to show that I've got credit cards. I have to prove my balance on my online banking app. The whole thing.
You have to explain why you're going and what's your reason for going to Baltimore and why are you flying into Dulles and what's your reason for doing that? And basically, what do you mean competitive nerf? What do you mean humans versus zombies? We don't understand any of this. And the best part of this, absolute best bit of this, is I am in the queue behind Joker. So I get to rock up and go, and why are you traveling to the US? I'm like, I'm traveling to the University of Maryland, Baltimore County to take part in a competitive Nerf event. And the guy just goes, are you with them? And I went, yes. And they went, pom, 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 pom. Have a good day, sir. I'm like,
but yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I think just flying for Nerf is actually the biggest challenge, because most of the stuff you have to deal with is about luggage restrictions, especially flying with lithium polymer batteries. And while the law says you're allowed to have them in your hand luggage, whether the security guard that's doing the bag check at Glasgow Airport knows that.
Oh yeah, you're not allowed to carry more than 6 LiPo batteries. I'm like, well, that's true if we're talking about drone batteries with a massive MAH rating. It's not true when we're talking about these little tiny batteries. Don't like your answer. Like, look, here's the rules. Tell me where I'm breaching. On your way.
Yeah, technically right is the best kind of right.
Yeah, because the big fear obviously is that they obviously have a right of veto and can just go, now we're just confiscating this because we think it's wrong. And so having to balance that. Obviously, Nerf is weird. It's already weird. And having to balance that with people who have never heard of it before and trying to evangelize for the community while also making it sound like you're not weird for running around with a bunch of kids' toys going off to play a sufficiently advanced game of tag.
Please explain this gun-shaped object in your hold luggage, sir.
Twice. Both ways.
Well, that is a Desert Pigeon Mark 8. It's a 3D printed blaster, and I use it for running around playing an advanced game of tag. What?
So, and then they give you leading questions like, why are you trying to import firearms into the United States? Because it isn't one.
The US doesn't need firearms imported. We've got enough on our own.
It's not the guns they're worried about, it's the unpaid tax.
Oh, that's harsh. No, so genuinely, right? Actually getting Nerf equipment. Well, we've done this often enough now. Getting our equipment from one country to another is now something that we're relatively practiced at. Worst case scenario, the biggest issue is always lipos. And the worst case scenario, we can always get those on site. We generally try and we have enough friends now in the US that we could go, hey guys, TSA confiscated our lipos. I need one that does this, one that does this, and one that does this. Can anyone help? And almost guaranteed that there'd be people who could lend us equipment. But the issue is always the issue is how do we safely, in the sense of how do we stop our equipment getting damaged by baggage handlers, and there's a whole bunch of sort of packing tips and things like that we've generated. Like we take the blast and we wrap it in clothing, and then that goes in the center of a hard shell suitcase surrounded by more clothing. So there's always kind of packing and things like that around them.
I usually
yeah.
will leave. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I usually, especially with 3D printed blasters, will leave a mag inside the blaster because it gives that little bit of extra support and that nice hollow bit to help prevent breaking.
Yeah.
And loose darts in the suitcase next to your stuff. So it's really obvious that's what it's for, and darts in the magazine. So if TSA do open it and go, what the, and go, oh, cool, it's a toy, click, done. But yes, there were some other logistical difficulties that we faced this year due to various unfortunate circumstances, which I will now hand back over to Joker to kind of discuss.
Yeah, so we we sort of confirmed our bookings months in advance. However, I was then involved in an incident which left me with a back injury and concussion about a month out from actually flying, which basically left me in a bit of a weird state where I wasn't sure if I would be able to go. I wasn't sure if it would be medically safe for me to go. And it's one of those things that I took the decision on the advice that I had and the information that I had to spike the trip. Because while I could have physically got on the plane in Glasgow, and that's one of those things, would I have suffered through the entire plane journey? Would I have had to spend the 5 or 6 days in America just sitting there going, oh God, that sucked. And now I'm going to have to do it again to get home. And it's all about that sort of impact of the enjoyment. And given that I spent most of that Saturday in bed with a migraine that felt like I'd been kicked by a horse, was probably the best decision. And
Yeah.
Even the refs from UMBC, or so the mods from UMBC, the refs from MFT and 11th Hour all went, no, this is stupid. Do not. There will be more times for us to play together. Do not injure yourself, please. Or do not injure yourself further, which is...
And that was kind of the fear that I had as the team leader, was the kind of conversation of, I do not want to tell one of my closest friends, no, you can't come and hang out with us. But the nature of the risk, what is called secondary impact syndrome, which is where somebody who has been concussed also then faces, has a similar impact. And that compounds the symptoms, makes it worse, and can, in worst case scenario, kill you. It's like, if something goes wrong, and we've seen it, because it happens, HVZ is a contact sport. Nerf, even if it isn't intentionally to be, is a contact sport. Like we saw we saw somebody at last year's MFT have to go to hospital for an injury. We saw somebody at last year's Maryland Mayhem basically be run into by a zombie because the two players misjudged what was going on. And at that point, we're like, we love you to death, mate, but it is not worth your life. It is not worth the potential risk factors. And we will absolutely make time to ensure that this isn't going to be the last time this opportunity is there for you. And we kind of got to 2 weeks out and was just, we have to kind of make the decision now. And Joker very reasonably and very sensibly went, based on all the advice I've received, the absolute best case scenario is I travel out there, I spend 6 days in the Airbnb or watching people have fun, and actually what that's going to do is make me more miserable. At least if I'm here, I'm in my own house, I have all my other friends around me, and I can support. And indeed, there were multiple points during the trip where Joker's ability to kind of be Oracle, to be like, hey, Joker, we need to find this information. The three of us are working on phones in a car park. Help.
Yep. And it's one of those things that one of the rules in the crew auxiliary as well is that the unsung hero of any deployment, the patsy, who is one person that stays in the safe zone and manages everybody's kit. And that was my fallback plan, was I'm going to sit in the safe zone and be your point of contact. I can get stuff ready for you for November 7 tactical solutions. I can prep things, even if all I'm doing is, sitting in a chair half the time. At least I'm doing something.
Okay.
But that is something that there's a great meme that my boyfriend shared, which is something about trying to be useful at the cost of your own sanity, which is not the best look, let's just say. Also, sorry, I had to go out there. There's a storm just happened. I just heard a massive thud from outside.
Everything all right?
Oh yeah, it's just lots of hail on the window, hence why I'm now blue as opposed to.
I'm also loving that when you turn your head to the side because your headphones are green, what we now have is a hole through your head.
Yeah. If I had,
really do a number on you.
But it was also because there's also an element there about dealing with uncertainty, because NHS guidance is the minimum recovery time for an impact-related concussion is 2 weeks. The maximum time is not specified. It can be theoretically infinite. And that's something that you have to sort of weigh up the risk and the value, because I sat there and going, oh no, I'm going to miss out on this once per year opportunity to do this thing that I really enjoy. And I've already spent so much money on doing this. But then I realized, hang on a minute, I'm going to miss talking to these friends. One of them is actually coming to the UK the next weekend anyway. So
Hello.
for another event that was going on that's not Nerf related, but is something that a lot of our mutual friends do. And it was that way of just going, ultimately, there is only so much value you can get over having same-day shipping from 5,000 miles away. And it wasn't worth the potential risk of me having an injury in the States, even with the travel insurance that I had.
Yeah.
And indeed, the difficulties that we're currently facing in trying to recover funds from Joker not having gone, I'm not 100% confident they would have covered them, even if they had gone, they'd have been like, oh, it's a pre-existing condition. Here, have a $2 million medical debt.
I mean, yeah, I did have to add it as a pre-existing condition on when I reported the incident.
So they had at least guaranteed that you would be covered if you traveled.
Yes.
That is better. That is good to know.
But there were other things because of the nature of the evidence required to prove the insurance claim. It's one of those weird things that fitness to do anything and fitness to travel, because you can still travel on a plane if you're sedated, unconscious, and being moved around in a wheelchair.
I mean, that sounds great.
Like I said, there are certain
pills.
Yeah, there are certain advantages to not having to drive. But it's one of those things that is an argument is not the right word. That is a discussion based around, and here's where I use one of my most hated words of the 2020s, guidance, where you can, where it's treated as the ineffable will of the fates by some, and if you disagree with it, well, that's just your opinion, man, because that's all guidance is. It's a set of best practice guidelines which anyone can issue, and that's where the personal risk analysis does come in. Is if you do have guidance that's contradictory, or you have advice that maybe, oh, it's not the best idea, but if you go, don't say we didn't warn you, but if you don't go, we're also not responsible.
It was definitely I know it was a thing that we all as a team kind of struggled with, is how do we best protect our friend and also best ensure that they have, that because the worst thing, the thing that I was most afraid of was basically saying, okay, we're gonna spike the trip, and then we're over there having fun, and Joker is sitting in Glasgow, kind of twiddling their thumbs, going, well, I could have been in Maryland. Feel great. It's the whole Apollo 13. No, I don't have the measles. And without wishing to sound like I was, I'm being mean about it, there was definitely a small amount of relief when Joker was like, I haven't got out of bed today. I have a migraine. I feel like absolute poo. And I'm like, I'm really glad that this was the right decision, because I would have hated to be like, no, Spectre, I do not in fact have the measles. Why am I here? Why am I not here? Why am I not helping you kill zombies in Maryland?
Yeah, and
Looking
that's
at
the... Go ahead.
No, because somebody that has gained a back injury, which still 8-9 months later causes me hassle. From
that when you fell down a flight of stairs,
yes,
like
that
a
would-
tit.
No, I believe it was like a sack of rocks. Tits generally bounce. Sorry. Family friendly.
We're gonna have to bleep you out now. And like, you're creating all of 10
No,
seconds of
I'm
work
pretty
for us.
sure I'm just going to leave that one in because that was funny.
Fair enough.
Yes, the as somebody who should have, after falling down the flight of stairs at hold the front page, should have gone and sought medical attention at the time instead of being a stubborn idiot who proceeded to dose himself up on very potent painkillers and went on to do everything that I possibly could to make sure that I didn't miss out any coverage. Yes, an event is just an event. You can go to the next one, and your health is very much not replaceable. So, yeah, I completely agree with Joker, and it's not worth your health.
And here's where I give the other the other factor, because they've just announced it literally in the past 24 hours, or at least provisional dates for the 28 Darts Later Invitational in London, which is just about as hard to get to as Washington. How? But yeah, it's just an event.
Just an event. It is
Good.
just an event, and it's there'll always be another one, and it's not worth putting yourself at risk for. But no.
Yeah, because 95% of the fun of the hobby for me is getting to have social with like-minded people, and the fact that that there's combat sports involved is entirely secondary. That's the excuse for the having fun.
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah, it's all about risk appraisal and having to be able to think about how that's going to sound after the fact, because knowing what I know now, the correct answer would have been to spike the trip immediately, or actually would have been to go to minor injuries, you fool, rather than just sitting going, oh no, I'm okay. It's just that the circumstances of the injury have a lot of logistics that I need to deal with. And then being at work, sedentary, in an uncomfortable chair for the best part of 2.5 days before realizing, hang on a minute, my head still really hurts.
Yeah. Before we go into letting Spectre call us more names for being stupid, because I'm sure he's got plenty more where that one came from. Why
I
don't
was
we?
mostly going to ask Reaper how it feels to break your ankle.
Yeah, go on then.
Okay, we don't need to go there. That
No,
is
no.
unrelated. Nerf.
We do. Come on, cough up.
Yeah, so we were at a friend's wedding and I fell because 4-inch platforms and tequila sunrises don't mix and hurt my ankle. And there was an ongoing debate as to whether or not that was a sprain or a break. And because American insurance is a nightmare, I refused to go to the hospital. And that was another concern I had with Joker coming to the States with a concussion, was what happens if they do get injured and then have to navigate the American health system. But I refused to go to the hospital for what was potentially a broken ankle. Went to the hospital on, I think, Tuesday, which this was after having to navigate airports by myself with a broken ankle. And we found out, yes, it had been broken. I should have gone to the hospital. But self-care is difficult.
In short, the message for everyone to take away from this is, if you have had an injury, however minor or serious it may be, speak to a medical professional at your earliest possible opportunity, so that the medical professional can tell you what that is, and to say, hey, you maybe should do X, Y, and Z, rather than just taking the really good painkillers and deciding that you're going to continue with your day. Which is why we have a medic on our team, don't we, Angel?
Yep. Who, also managed to hurt himself at a recent event. But, yeah, like, especially for stuff like back and head injuries, don't risk it. Because those can get complicated really quickly.
Gee, I don't know how that feels. I forgot what 26 was.
Yeah.
There was just no number between 25 and 27.
I feel like there's more of a story there.
Oh no, this was me sitting on the incident happened on a Monday. This was me sitting on like the Thursday morning at work, just looking at something, going,
I've forgotten how to count.
I know that says 25, and I know that the other thing says 26, but I can't figure out. I can't justify the. Here's this discrepancy. Can we please address this as part of the process of what I do at work? It was like, I can't think of why 25 and 26 are different.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's small. It was small things like that initially, like little bits that you just don't quite think about in daily life, and then it gradually got worse and worse. But luckily, I had a long weekend that I could sort of get over the hump. But by then, the damage was done, and it was then that I developed my drinking problem.
In that you couldn't drink a glass of water, not that you had an alcohol problem.
Did that not come across on the stream?
No.
It looked like you hit yourself on the head with an empty can of.
I'll do it again.
Fanta.
Ah, yes, that's a drinking problem. But yes, logistics were extensively complicated by the fact that one of my logistics officers got a concussion. But crucially, was still able to provide us with support from afar, which was greatly appreciated. Thank you, Joker.
No doubt, yes.
Yes.
Why don't we
Joker saved my brain cell.
The best part is I can't even remember how. Massage my ego.
There was a long layover I had where I desperately needed a cup of coffee, both to just help me focus and to get me through the flight without wanting to chew people's faces off. And couldn't for the life of me find a coffee shop in this terminal. And I got a message from Joker that was, "Would you like some logistics help?" And Joker found me a coffee shop. It was lovely. Let me get through the last leg of my journey.
Not just found coffee shops, but here is where you are in the airport. Here is where the coffee shop is. Here is the route you need to take to get to the coffee shop. The coffee will cost you this amount of money.
The best part was I was looking at it and the airport you were in, and it's like, because you had looked for something and the coffee shop was called Hudson's. The convenience stores that were dotted all around the terminal were called Hudson.
Yeah.
And I want to find the person who made that, made the decision to allow those two stores to coexist in the same place and insert something into the side of their skull, probably a rake.
Yep. I don't even remember which airport that was, but yes, it was a bad airport. I didn't like it. I don't want to go through there again.
That wasn't. It wasn't DFW. Doesn't matter anyway.
Oh, David, what would you like to ask us next about our expedition to another country?
Well, what I thought we'd do is we'd essentially actually talk about the event itself, the day by day, what happened in each one, what your personal highlights were, any particular, I don't want to start, I was going to say any significant issues that cropped up, but let's not do that one, okay? Let's brush nicely over that one, okay? And then basically any feedback and any improvements that you would have suggested to staff, who may happen to listen to this one, okay? So who wants to go first in regards to what happened on each particular day?
I mean, we've all talked a lot. I think Angel should go next.
Great. Now I've got to try and remember everything that happened very, very quickly. So I think we flew in on the 18th. Got to our Airbnb at silly o'clock in the evening, from what I remember. Basically had an evening to just be dead. Next day rolls around where we start screwing around trying to find various resources, food, such, get familiar with the location we were in. I think the first game we actually went to was the Invitational on the Saturday.
Yeah, we attended the tournament on the Friday because one of the members of November 7 Tactical Solutions, my sister Archer, was I don't know if Archer's been on Tag Talk before, but they also have their own YouTube channel. They're heavily involved in Women of Nerf, and they also have their own podcast. Somebody remind me what their podcast is called, because I'm going to look a
Fast
really
Track.
bad brother.
Fast Track.
Thank you.
Also, it was 2 members.
Yeah.
Two
Yes.
members?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, because Virus, yes, of course, because Virus was playing as well. Yes, I'm sorry, I spaced entirely. Yes, so 2 members of the wider team were playing in the tournament, and so we wanted to go along and be supportive, because obviously that's what you do. There were also some retailers also present there, which was nice. We got to play around with the new Nexus Pro X, the Dart Zone booth. I got to see a whole bunch of new shinies from the competitive scene. But yeah, so we went along and we watched the elimination bracket of the tournament. There were 2 aspects to the MFT, which were the kind of round robin stuff at the beginning, which did the seeding for the elimination, and we basically got up late, having recovered from our flight, went to the elimination and hung out there for the afternoon. But yes, the first game we actually played was the Invitational, which is a change from last year because I took part in the MFT last year. We may consider fielding a November 7 team at a future MFT, but that is still a discussion that is well up in the air. However, Angel, back to you. We rocked up on the morning of the Invitational.
Yep, so Invitational Day rolls around. We roll up in all of our somewhat matching equipment, looking all ready to go, liaise with some of the members of the auxiliary, just because they were going to turn up. So we ended up sort of working with them, not as an official auxiliary deployment again, but as a little coalition, I guess. We start setting ourselves up, making sure everyone's equipment is set up the way we need it, make sure everyone's using the same radio frequencies, basically catching everybody up on how we do things, because unfortunately, and this was actually completely by accident, we ended up just being in charge of our human group. Which
competency will out, apparently.
Yeah. And for the life of me, I can't remember the details of any of the missions. But I'm going to have to hand that back over to Spectre for that.
So mission one. So to elaborate a little, the auxiliary as a group primarily exists to support Captain Xavier when he deploys in that role. Captain Xavier elected this year to be like, you know what? I haven't played a humans versus zombie as an actual like mook human forever, and I'd like to remind myself what that's like. So I'm not doing an auxiliary deployment. Except when you have a bunch of people who are very efficient and very goal orientated, which is what the the combat division tends to attract. Basically, we had a whole bunch of people who were willing to basically like, yeah, we're not doing a full on combat column deployment, but it just makes sense for us to kind of rock up together and to do the thing. And because I am currently one of the senior NCOs, Angel is an NCO, Reaper's an NCO, all in the auxiliary, there was a lot of to say that we were in charge is kind of both accurate but also not really fair, and I don't wish to disparage either of the other two squad leaders who were present, who were basically, because of the nature of the people who make up the auxiliary and the irregulars, there's a bunch of people who've kind of got their own similar things to November 7 Tactical Solutions. So we had Vader there with his entire family, which is like 8 or 9 people strong. He has basically decided to build his own zombie apocalypse survival team by having a bunch of children, and it's great. So Vader and his group were there, and there were also Galaxy and his guys were there. Now he had a number of people who he knew through the SCA, the Society for Creative Anachronism, and they basically gone, this sounds like fun, we're going to rock up, and they had created a whole new squad called DERP, which is definitely an acronym that I definitely remember. Hey Reaper, what does DERP stand for? Pause for Reaper. Have we lost the Reaper?
Well, clearly the internet doesn't want anyone to know what DERP stands for.
Yeah, that's what we should take away.
That's what we should take away from that. But yeah, it's an acronym. I'm pretty sure that the RP is Response Patrol, and the DE is something to do with being undead. I will figure that out, or when Reaper gets their connection back, we will find out what it actually stands for. Hello, Reaper, you back?
Excellent. Disaster and Epidemic Response Program is what it stands for.
Ah, fantastic. So it's not so I got one of the four letters right. Cool. But yes, they did, and both groups did really, really well. I liaised with each of the squad leaders to try and make sure that we did as well as we could as a mission group. But as the nature of how the auxiliary works, there was a certain amount of deference to the previous years of experience where we'd been in charge already. So like we know how this works. So I tried really hard to make sure that I was engaging with them as equals as squad leaders rather than just defaulting to I'm Sergeant Spectre, what I say goes. But it also helps that they're willing. It's very easy to lead when people are willing to follow. And you can't lead if people aren't. So I really found I was so grateful to Vader and to Galaxy for putting that trust in me and being like, yeah, we will follow you guys. Which is why I felt really bad that I got a lot of them killed. I got a lot of them tagged, or rather, we were placed in a position where a lot of us got tagged, and I don't want to say it was a targeted attempt on the group, but it really, really felt like it. Our first mission was going to a location to solve some puzzles. We then had a Reaper then wrangled getting the people who are good at puzzles to solve the puzzles, and we did the puzzles whilst we maintained a perimeter to ensure that the zombies couldn't interrupt the people doing the puzzles. We then, having solved the puzzles, knew where to go next, so we went there. And we had to, because the whole game this year was cowboy themed. So we had to build a still so that the moderator, the zombie NPC, could make moonshine. And the way that the still was made was by basically finding a whole bunch of bits of cardboard and then building the still out of that cardboard. Again, puzzle team handled that. The rest of us kept the zombies away from the puzzle group. Mission 3 involved us going to another location and finding a number of potatoes so we could use the still to make moonshine. This was basically a scavenger hunt. We had to go around a particular area and find a whole bunch of potatoes that have been wrapped in tinfoil. Those potatoes could only be carried, one per person, and had to be carried in your hand. So we had to do a whole thing. We're like, right, okay, so who has a one-handed blaster? Who has a blaster that can still fire whilst holding a potato? Sentences I have said in the year of our Lord 2024. Who has a blaster that can still work whilst carrying a potato? This is what we mean. Well, this is a very silly game. It's very hard to take it seriously. It's an overgrown game of tag with children's toys, and UMBC is really, really good about making things feel like it matters whilst also being faintly ridiculous, which means nobody gets too wound up about it. They pitch it really, really well. It's one of the reasons why we keep going back to UMBC for their invitationals, is because it hits that kind of level that I love about Nerf, which is like, I've done airsoft and I've done paintball, and they often get very serious very fast. Whereas Nerf, because it's a sport played with children's toys, it can be taken quite seriously, like the competitive stuff aside. But the humans versus zombies and the baseline kind of game premise is inherently ridiculous. So I love the fact that they kind of lean into that. It's like, you need to go and find me 17 potatoes. Like, okay, so why 17? Like, I don't understand why it's that many. That's just how many I had in my house. Fine.
Gee willikers, guys, we need to go and get some Scooby snacks.
I should have seen that coming. You still have to do the mission.
As 10 of us pull Scooby branded sweets out of our pockets and hand them to the moderator because it was a Scooby-Doo themed one 2 years ago. That sort of thing.
Yeah. And then we then had to take the potatoes back to the still, and we had to make moonshine, which was basically a hold. Holds in Humans versus Zombies are basically, you have to stay in location and do a thing for a given time frame, which is basically designed to hold humans in one place while the zombies rock up and bash themselves off the group. And missions 1 through 3 have gone relatively smoothly for us. Like, there's been the occasional zombie contact, like a couple of Zeds, no big scary, like, where this is fine. Every other group, we found out later, has had some intense zombie contact. We have basically been, I don't want to say left alone, but certainly we didn't feel threatened at any point so far. We then had to take the moonshine, which was a number of large water bottles filled with water, in a really useful box, like a plastic tote, and that had to be carried by 2 people, each of which had to have one hand on the thing at any point. So again, we're finding people who are strong enough to carry this thing, comfortably move quickly with it, and to to be able to operate the blaster. So that's fine. We make our way back to the safe zone at this point, because by this point, because we've completed mission 3, we've unlocked the ability for us to use full on ammunition capacity. One of the things that UMBC does to try and help with horde growth in the early stages is it limits you to 6-round magazines only, or the blaster can only have 6 rounds in it. So if I've got a 40 round magazine for my FDL3, I can carry that on me, but I can't use it. Now, because we've done this a bunch, this is now our third HVZ Invitational with UMBC, we had set our gear up so that when the unlock happened, we just went, cool, those magazines go away. The magazines we also have in our gear come out and we're ready to rock and roll. But a number of and particularly Galaxy's squad, who were very new, and this was their first Invitational, we're not set up to do that. So they were like, right, okay, so what we're going to do, because we don't want to place these guys under significant threat, we're going to put those guys in the center of the group, and we're going to go back to the safe zone so they can grab their gear. Because it's hard to get people moving after they stop, the time that we spend in the safe zone is longer than is ideal. And that means that two other groups who are out doing their missions make it back to the safe zone, and they bring a bunch of zombies with them. So we're like, right, okay, so we need to finish mission 4 and we need to get out. So we punch out of the safe zone, taking advantage of another group arriving, distracting the zombies, and we make our way out with no casualties. Frankly, I am very impressed that we did that with no casualties. I was expecting us to lose people there. We then find out that the place we need to do the completion hold for mission 4, which was a 20-minute, what's called a non-cumulative hold, which means that if it stops, the clock restarts at 20 minutes. Sorry, Joker, go ahead.
It was cumulative. I clarified that after the fact. It was cumulative, however, the information went a little bit wazzy. But
fair enough. 20 minutes is still a long-ass time, even if it's a cumulative hold. But certainly we were under the impression it was non-cumulative, which means that if you can't stop it and leave it. If you stop it, it's done. And this hold is in there are 2 areas on the UMBC campus that are no blaster zones, where you cannot use and operate a blaster. This is because they're in residential parts of the campus where there are dormitories, and the custodian services get very tetchy about darts in their flower beds, which is not an unreasonable request. So the way that UMBC handles that is they basically go, these areas are no blaster zones. You can still use throwables like socks or like the foam throwable brains or the various other foam things that we use. Like Joker orders a bunch of stress balls every year for us, so we have a throwable, but obviously those are bigger, easier to find. Cleanup is much easier to do. So that's how they handle that. So our hold is 20 minutes long in the center of this no blaster zone. The vast majority of our group is not set up to deal with that. So we make the decision that we're going to place our perimeter at the edge of that no blaster zone, so that we're basically going, we can still use our equipment and we're going to have our fight at the edge of the zone. But it does mean that we can't easily retreat. We are actually doing quite well. We're, I think, 5, 6, maybe even 8 minutes into the hold. And I'm like, the zombies don't know we're here. They've not realized what's going on. We're going to do this. And I'm spending all of this time not externally, but internally getting increasingly anxious because we are in a very bad tactical position. And then another group doing an escort quest comes by us. So they're basically following a path along that crosses us. And the main horde, or at least a significant chunk of the main horde, is chasing the escort quest. They bounce off us a couple of times because we're doing our thing. We've got a line of people with fully automatic gear. We've got some people basically dealing with the various special zombies that can only be taken out by throwables. We are holding our own, and the group of zombies that is chasing the escort quest bounces off us a couple of times. We take no losses. We're feeling pretty good about ourselves, and I'm like, this is fine. This is fine. We're running the clock. We're good. They then go, we're not making an impact here, and go back to chasing the escort quest. About 5 minutes later, having eaten 2/3 of the humans guarding the escort quest and summoned a good chunk of the OZs, which have a faster respawn timer and are crucially the UMBC professional zombies, like the people who always play as zombies, show up. And I'm like, we're dead. And Angel actually comes on my shoulder and is like, mate, we're not getting out of this. All we can do is hold as long as we possibly can and try and get the hold completed. I'm like, cool. So this is where we this is where we go. Fantastic. Let's do this. And the first charge gets repulsed. And I have this brief moment of hope. And then I see them point at me. And I'm like, oh dear, don't like that. And the entire sort of horde forms himself into a 2 or 3 wide line and charges the line where I am. And we're doing really well about keeping them off until I feel a hand on my shoulder. Because I've tunnel visioned on dealing with what is a large group of zombies, which appear to be charging me, and I've completely missed the 2 OZs who have come round the side and gone, hey, Spectre, welcome to the Horde. And I'm like, I can't even be mad at that. It's like that scene from Jurassic Park where the guy goes, clever girl, and then gets eaten.
Yeah.
Can't be mad about it. And then I walk forward and I'm on the radio. Spectre N7 is status 0. Command passes to Tango 3, which is Angel. Reaper then also comes up from maintaining the hold to try and provide additional support, and the Horde again targets both of them. Reaper gets taken out, and Angel doesn't get taken out, but only because the zombie that was trying to tag him can't slow down in time, and Angel and they turn into a tangle of limbs on the floor. So whilst they never actually tagged him out, Angel is functionally non-combat effective at that point either. You are still muted, mate?
Yep, it's because I have 2 different mute buttons. So what ended up happening with that is the zombie steps towards me. It was one of the beta zombies that was only stunnable with a throwable. I actually hit him with the throwable. So it either didn't stop in time or didn't feel the tag or didn't take it, whichever. But because I've got someone who is roughly my size barreling towards me, I have to take a step back. But the terrain right behind me, I didn't think about this at the time because you tend not to. It was slightly uneven, so I've taken a step back and basically fallen over myself and become a pretzel for about 5 seconds, which threw my back out, hurt my head, hurt my shoulder, and they ended up having to pause the game at that point to make sure I hadn't just crippled myself. But yeah, they technically never tagged me.
Technically last human alive. But no. So that happens. We then start making our way back to the safe zone to make sure that Angel gets seen by. Well, Angel is again fantastic work by the UMBC guys. They have medics with each group. They have a medic with the zombies. So Angel gets seen by a trained medical professional as soon as the incident occurs, which is great. They then come back with us to the safe zone. We are like, right, okay, we're going to stay here until we find out what happened. As I'm given to understand from other people, the hold was completed with seconds to spare. Of the 30 to 40 people in our group, maybe 10 of them got out, if that. But that's the game. And like I personally was feeling quite bad about it on the Saturday, because I didn't learn that the hold had been completed until after lunch. I thought we'd failed. So I'm sitting back in the safe zone and then back at the B, having gone back because again UMBC stops for lunch. There's a game pause declared for an hour and a half to give people like the ability to go get food and what have you without having to worry about being tagged and all of that. So I'm back at the Airbnb and I'm feeling like I have screwed the pooch massively. I have got a number of people who put their trust in me tagged out, and I'm feeling really, really bad about it. And this is something I kind of want to touch on because it's something that, particularly in the UK, where Humans versus Zombies is a very rare game type, like particularly in the campus style HVZ. There's literally one in the UK, which is the Royal Holloway game that Joker mentioned earlier. There's a relative, I don't want to say it's a problem, but it's definitely a thing that happens where humans, when they get tagged out in a big invitational game, will be like, well, that's my game over. My game's done. And they either don't play zombie or they don't push themselves into playing zombie particularly. Like they kind of walk around and they don't kind of throw their energy into it. And everybody's entitled to make their own decision, right? But Humans versus Zombies is a game of two halves. Playing a zombie is equally, if not potentially more important than playing human. And one of the things that UMBC in particular does really well is make sure that zombies have engagement and like it isn't just you run at the group, you run at the group, you run at the group, you fall over because you're exhausted. Like there's a bunch of things that they do to make being a zombie both fun and engaging, but also to allow for varying levels of physicality. Like they had puzzles that zombies could solve. So if you have a zombie who has injured themselves or doesn't have great knees, or that relies when they're playing a human on weight of firepower because they can't run, they can then come back to the zombie base and be like, right, okay, here's this puzzle for you to solve. When you solve that, the zombie group gets a power up. They have a whole bunch of different ways in which they can support alternate zombie type play. But the problem is, it is. But the problem that is always faced by any significant size Humans versus Zombies game is the people who just go, I'm out. I came to be a human. I'm not a human anymore. And unfortunately, some of those people get tagged out in the first 10 minutes. I got tagged out in the first, like this has been done to death on various YouTube channels, but I got taken out in my first 10 minutes of my first end war. And I spent the entire day as a zombie.
Saw that one.
Yeah. And I think it's really important. And the thing was, I've said this before, and I've said this out loud, and I've said it in various kind of social medias and on YouTube videos and similar ways, how important it is to play zombie. And I was sitting in the Airbnb on that day going, I have got 90%, a good 2/3 of my group has been wiped out because I made poor tactical decisions. Well, that's how I felt about it anyway. Mm-hmm. And lots of people are like, no, that was a shitty tactical situation. There weren't any real good answers to what we were faced. That was a kill box that they put us in to grow the horde. That's going to happen. You didn't have a huge amount of options. But of course, because I'm a huge perfectionist and massive, I've been like, I should have been faster, I should have been cleverer, I should have been better. And I am sitting there in the Airbnb like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back and face these people, and I sure as hell don't want to go back and be a zombie because I feel like poo. And because I've been quite so vehement in various places about how people that don't play zombie are not good for the game, I was like, well, I could be the hypocrite that can be seen from space and stay here and not do anything and not play this like other half of the game, or I can suck it up and do the thing. And I'm really, and this is this is where I kind of go in this. I know I've kind of rambled a bit, but the thing that I really want to point out is that in the game that I played after lunch, the engagement as a zombie, the being part of the zombie energy, the being part of the horde, getting human tags, doing the kind of flanking and all of that, all of the kind of energy of being part of that side of the game is actually what made the day for me. Because if I just stayed home on the Saturday afternoon, I'd have been like, and I would have had a rubbish day. I would have gone back to the UK saying, I did not do as well as that as I could, and I didn't enjoy myself. But actually, because I went back, because I was surrounded by people who were willing to kind of the nature of the nature of a zombie horde energy cannot be overstated. That energy was really good in kind of re-energizing me, but also the nature of the gameplay and there's nothing like there's a huge amount of kind of play to be made, kind of like running around gives you endorphins, yada yada yada. But in general, the being part of the other half of the game is actually what made the game good for me. And I'm so glad I did it. And I really encourage anybody that is intending on attending one of these invitationals, there will be a point after you get tagged out where you feel like you don't want to continue. There will be a point where your brain is trying to tell you that your day is over and that you have failed. Don't listen to it. Sit down, have a drink, hug your friends. If you feel like you want to cry, have a 5-minute cry. Crying is healthy. Do it. Do whatever you need to do to kind of get past that initial hurdle and then get up and go and tag some humans. I cannot overstate the difference it made to my game that day to be part of it. And I cannot overstate how many people I see that came away being like, yeah, like there's people who I tagged who now have good stories because of how they were tagged. There are people like I had one of the volatile vests, which were the throwable only, and the nature of those vests is that when the first person that you tagged while wearing the vest then got the vest. And there was a moment where I tagged a human who had been like, why won't you stop? Why won't you stop? Why won't you stop? Oh, you're wearing a vest. Oh, I'm dead. Oh, I'm like, cool. Welcome to the Horde. Here is your volatile vest. And they went from, oh, I'm miserable because I've been tagged out to, wait, I get a zombie perk? Hey, sweetie. And then she turned and waved to her husband, who is still a human and still playing, like, I'm going to come get you. And I'm like, oh, that's adorable. And just watching the kind of going through those moments of like, oh, I'm so disappointed. Oh, I'm engaged again was brilliant. Again, another good thing that UMBC is really good about is making sure that the zombies feel engaged, and the transfer on kill stuff was great for that. But being present for those kind of interactions and helping other people make good stories. Sorry, Joker, I rambled enough.
No, it's fine. And this is like, and even then, it's not just the UMBC moderators that get in on that action, because, I mean, in UMBC's past, in 2022 and 23 at least, the captain made all of the crew auxiliary dog tags that you could split to give, a trophy to the zombie that killed you. They get the other half of your dog tag, as it were. And this year, Boomstick went above and beyond by creating these invisible things. There are some ID patches based around his whole aesthetic of being a zombie lab researcher, and he made custom ones for Team N7 and a bunch of other people. Which
he made over 100 of those things.
Yeah. I don't know how to open it up. I think it's just
I had to use a knife to open it up, but it was not cooperating with me.
Let me find it. Continue amongst yourselves. I'll find a.
But yeah,
I'll go grab mine. I'll be right back.
Do you still have the back half of yours?
If I could very quickly jump in just now, I want to know the moment that you found out that you'd actually managed to hold it, because I'm sitting waiting for the moment to find out when it is.
So I found that out midway through the afternoon when I ran into one of the few still surviving members of November 7 Tactical Solutions, a guy called Jesse, who is my sister's best mate. And he was like, I'm like, oh man, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that you did that, that we let you down. He was like, you didn't let us down. We got it done. And that again made part of my sort of event kind of upswing. Again, that's the whole, I went back and I did the thing. And if I hadn't been back and I hadn't had that conversation, it would have made a huge difference. But that's when I found out. And Archer made it all the way to the final stand. You are an invisible thing. An invisible thing.
Yeah, This is the idea. Oh yeah, because it's white. I didn't realize the back. I've never actually seen the back. So this is what the moderators handed out, was a lanyard and ID patch, or an ID card for the game. But boomstick, and I've just dropped the second half of it on the floor like a chimp. But yeah, the ID badge actually splits in half. The back comes off, and you can hand your brain to the zombie that tagged you,
That's cool.
which is utterly like so inspired. And the best part is our ID patches, because of the way they're printed, are black, white, and red. And you can sort of see that in the layer lines because it's all 3D printing.
That
I
is
have
very,
thrown
very
an
smart.
image into the team chat.
I will forward that to David
later.
later for them to insert as well. But yes, and the other thing about that is that when we were taken out, we were like, cool. So how many of those can we collect from the other people that have them? Which is another kind of like, and also I have not the N7 patch, not the little kind of patches, but the Alliance Special Forces roundel. I have one of those that I keep with me, and the zombie that tags me out gets that as well. Because I love the idea that we drop loot. I love the basic like Al the Geek, for example, was running around with one of his customized master key blasters, and the zombie that tagged him got given the blaster. Worked really hard for that, didn't get it. But yeah, there's so much to say, and so much like I can't kind of I cannot stress enough. Like, there are other invitationals that you can attend that that are in the US. End War obviously is the big famous one. The Pacific Area Survival Fest, PASEF.
That you're thinking of Ragnarok Oktoberfest. It used to be called the Pennsylvania Survival Fest. It is now just called Survival Fest. PA is Pennsylvania
area. Sorry,
no, it's not even areas. That's just the abbreviation for Pennsylvania, because
okay. But
States.
it's now just Survival Fest. They're in their second year now. We are considering Survival Fest as potentially a team hop at some point, but obviously getting to the US is expensive. If people want to, like, hey, here's a shameless plug. Would you like November 7 Tactical Solutions to show up to your event and help make zombies cry? We are 100% available to be hired to come to your events and make zombies cry. In the metaphorical sense, not in the actual sense. We don't actually want to upset people just because people in the comment section. Yes, we are 100% here for that. But yes, if you can only attend, like Captain Xavier described Maryland Mayhem as the premier event in the hobby this year, and I don't think he's wrong. Like, there is a reason we keep going back. There is a reason why. Why are you picking your nose, David?
I'm not picking my nose. I'm putting eye drops in.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
my eyes don't work properly, so my tears don't form.
Oh
correctly.
yeah, no, we had those last year. We had
I don't know where my dog. Like, I usually have my dog tags hanging on a hook on the door beside my desk. I took them off to do something with them, and I can't remember what it was. And they are somewhere in my flat, but this sits on my desk because this is the one that isn't attached to a chain. Because last year was loosely themed around a certain, I was about to say a certain Disney property, and Galaxy made the Aztec Gold from Pirates of the Caribbean with UMBC, or sorry, auxiliary UMBC 15th April 2023 around the rim, which is just beautiful print work. But yeah, that's like tiny little things like that. Because, like, yeah, I could have got a big blaster, but this is like this is special.
And
I still keep the Kill Factory 11 coins in my case. Again, I haven't actually put Velcro back on them.
One of the reasons why we did the coins is the same kind of idea. The idea of the challenge coins for event attendance. Love the idea to bits. But yeah, I can't if you are in the UK, or if you're outside of the, in fact, I was going to say if you're outside the US, if you are interested in attending a very, very good HVZ Invitational in the traditional US college style, Maryland Mayhem is great for that, because it has the competitive stuff on the Friday, it has the casual PvP stuff on the Sunday, it's got the main invitational day on the Saturday, and if you're willing to make a week of it, UMBC also hosts what they refer to as one nights, which are like missions that last an hour, hour and a half on Monday and Thursday nights. So if you fly in on the Wednesday and you're mad, you can do the Thursday night, then go to the tournament on Friday, then play the invitational on Saturday, then do casual PvP on Monday, then do a one night on Monday night, and then fly home on the Tuesday.
And have your legs cramp up and nearly have a blood clot like I did 2 years ago.
Let's not talk about the mistakes that we've made. Let's talk about how cool it is to do the thing.
Yes. But yeah, we were talking about taking care of people.
Like you mentioned the Monday night game, like we had a pretty good one as well.
Yeah, Monday night.
I blanked on theming for it.
The Monday night game was everything that isn't grass is rushing water.
Yeah.
So any concrete, any paths, whatever, you cannot enter that without being in physical contact with another player.
Yep.
Which, for those of us who are very good at working together, was great.
Yeah, it's like a bunch of people were frantically looking around the briefing room, looking for, a wandering body, and it's like, it's fine. I brought my own from home.
Here's one we made earlier.
And I'd actually played this because they announce in their Discord for the club what missions they're going to be playing, a week or 2 weeks in advance. And I was like, oh, now I've played this. I've played this before, and I know what the solution is. So I brought an elasticated sling for Angel to hold on to whilst it was around me, so that we didn't have to maintain contact directly, because you could hold on to the bit of gear, which meant that we had a bit more space between us.
And
we didn't quite get to the sort of last part of it. We got to the final hold, and then we got taken out.
But because we were both mid reload, not because any zombies actually managed to get the jump on us. But yeah, that was.
It was a good. Yeah. The one night missions are great, and they're particularly good if you've never played campus style HVZ before. If you can make it and do the Thursday one night, you get a really good kind of taster / mission zero, which is like, it doesn't matter if you're a zombie, you get taken out on Thursday one night, you'll still be a human when we start the invitation on Saturday morning. It just gives you that opportunity to get a sense of how that game plays, and also get some familiarity with the campus. So yeah, there's a number of really good invitational options, but if you only can attend one, like Maryland Mayhem, we've been back 3 years in a row now, which I feel is the best compliment we can pay it.
Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable.
You might actually be the best person to kind of provide more insight into American HVZ and the positioning of Maryland Mayhem into how good an event it is.
I mean, you've touched on it very well. There are lots of events and invitationals that do different things. There's different invitationals that lean more into their theme and more into playing up not necessarily cutscenes, but more of the moderators and the NPCs are more committed to the bit. There's HVZs that play it more like a game of tag. That's how Purdue's HVZ scene has changed over the years. But Maryland Mayhem, I think, has the most traditional feel. It's the best for a newcomer into the hobby, or for somebody who just wants that basic baseline HVZ experience.
I mean, as someone who's also like expending a significant amount of time and effort to come to these events, like, so if you find that you're really into HVZ, for example, to take Survival Fest as an example, their event runs, I think it's 2.5 days of just HVZ, the whole thing. At least that's what it was last year. I haven't really, because I realized I wouldn't be able to go to this year's, I've not been paying too close attention to events that I don't really go to. I have a really bad fear of missing out. But the whole thing about Maryland Mayhem is it does feel rather effectively like a sort of highlight reel, if you will, of the US Nerf scene. It's the sort of all-stars of 3 different PvP groups. You've got the competitive scene as well that's sort of starting up. That was who was the Ion Rush originally? It was
Atomic Art League.
Thank you. And I knew it was something DL, and I just couldn't remember what they were called. And you've got the legacy of that. You've got obviously the convention, but it's having been to some Comic-Cons in the past, it's a little bit sort of lighter and pared down, but that means it's easier to digest. You can take a bit more time to sort of really look at the things that that are on offer. And that's what I really like about it is, as well as, while you've only got 1 day to do a thing, you've got an entire day to do a thing. As I occasionally quip when Spectre's away doing something else and I'm looking after the family pets, it's that way of going, yes, 3 days of looking after pets is just enough time to make you realize, oh yeah, I wouldn't own pets myself, which is great because you get a weekend to do it. And you think that sounds like a really small amount of time, but it actually really isn't. There was a point in there somewhere, you might have flubbed it.
I think you make a very good point in that the benefit that MM has over, say, PASF, which or what is now Survival Fest. Survival Fest looks really great, and I'm super enthused about it as a game concept. Like they had a stall at Plasticon. The nature of the game that they're trying to play, I'm really enthused by. The people who are running it are people who I generally trust as event runners, and as such, I would encourage anybody who is interested to check that out. But it is a 2.5 day HVZ invitational. So it's very much all HVZ all the time, which is great. It's not a bad thing. But if what you want is a sort of basically, if you want a smorgasbord, then Maryland Mayhem really has you covered. If you want 2.5 day HVZ experience, SF has you. But yeah, if you are outside of the US and you're really interested in kind of getting the experience of the US Nerf scene, Maryland Mayhem offers a real good kind of taster buffet of everything within the scene. This is where David asks another question, so we don't look like a chimp sitting here in silence.
I was just giving the opportunity for anybody else. I'm thoroughly enjoying just listening to the whole thing. It's not something where, as I've previously said, I'm not against HVZ. It's just not something that personally speaks to me. Okay, but I have found that the course of listening to this particular conversation has maybe made me consider, well, yeah, maybe, if I happen to suddenly find myself with a several £1,000 surplus, it would be something I certainly consider at least doing once.
So, I mean, it's one of those things that it's not as expensive as you think. I mean, it is expensive, don't get me wrong, but like several £1,000s is what I would call Disney money. Whereas,
okay, well, so if I don't know if you mind sharing this, then what did it actually cost you, as a round figure, time you factored in every single thing?
Oh, that's an evil question.
Per
My
person,
wife's going to watch this video.
Thank you. So for me, it's one of those things that, I mean, the flights, because we book through Dublin, through Aer Lingus, the flights are usually about £500 to £600, give or take. If you book far enough in advance, which we usually do, we sort of plan this quite well. You've got car hire. We split the cost of an Airbnb down the middle. So I think my share was just a little over 1,000.
That's not too bad, actually.
I mean, you do have, food, snacks, and imports, where I none too subtly show off my Nexus that desperately wants to be an Eon. But
It's trying to disprove its existence. That's all it is.
it is camo print, so but you can get that sort of thing. You can travel super light, but there's a certain floor of the cost because you're flying with a checked bag, so you can't do the whole no hold luggage super cheap fare thing that is available in certain carriers, unless you want to play a Nerf game, which is an entirely different kettle of fish.
So to elaborate on that, shall we play a Nerf game is a thought experiment that Joker and I came up with on the way to the first Maryland Invitational we went to, which is what happens if our luggage gets lost or damaged or broken.
It was on the way to Kill Factory 8.
Like, what do we do? And the answer is, if you are the premise basically goes, if you are attending an international event and you basically only have the clothes you're standing up in, let's assume that you're traveling in appropriate gear. Pro tip for traveling: if you are going to attend an international Earth game, travel in clothing that you would be happy to play the game in.
And not necessarily your heaviest clothing. Speaking as someone who wore red combats through 2 international airports and got very heavily interviewed twice.
Yeah. But yes, the idea basically being that if you wanted to, if you had to basically equip yourself from stuff you could buy at Walmart, what are the solutions? What are the options for a 120/130 FPS game, assuming that you cannot borrow from anyone else, that you must purchase from Walmart or Target, or basically it is stuff that is available to everybody on the high street? And the answer to that question generally is go to Target, buy a Villainator, because it's a 20 round drum, pump action Springer. There's very little to go wrong, and it has enough onboard capacity to very happily play HVC with.
Yeah, yeah. I was actually going to spend. I actually thought Joker would have gone to the extent of saying purchase 2 Outlaws.
Also an option depending on your lead time, because Outlaws are not available in stores.
Oh,
but if you're like, well, I'm arriving on Wednesday and I can get Dart Zone to ship it to us at where we're staying, that's a separate thing. But the hard mode version of this game is based on the idea that you are literally flying in the morning of.
Fair enough.
Like, you fly in on the Friday, you're playing the game the day after, you don't have any lead time, you've got no support network. What do you do? And there are a number of options.
Twin Trailblazers.
Backup 1.
But yes, what were we talking about before we got onto this? I just wanted to explain what you meant by shall we play a Nerf game?
Cost.
Yes.
So driving down costs. So I mean, we are hiring a car, but we are splitting the cost down between us as a team. So which means we can get a larger vehicle that can carry all of our stuff. 3 of us are 6 foot tall, so
yeah. So hiring a big SUV is useful. We used a service called Truro for that, which is like Airbnb but for cars. So rather than us hiring through, say, Enterprise and paying $600 for the week, we paid $300 for the week because we hired it through Truro. Yeah, I reckon it would be fair to say that with flights and all ancillary costs, not including food, probably somewhere between £1,000 and £1,200 for the trip.
Plus,
so that's
and then your ancillaries. Like, so it is important also to note, if you are a UK resident, you do need to apply for a visa waiver. well in advance, which is I think $20.
Yeah, 20.
14.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of nominal kind of
Yeah,
figures.
on the scale.
Yes. But yeah, I like with Airbnb, car hire, but all of these things are subject to economies of scale. Like again, the Airbnb that we rented had space for 10 people. So we were able to divide the cost of that hire between all of November 7 Tactical Solutions, barring the one person who rolled in for one day. There are lots of things you can do to kind of drive the costs down if you're traveling as a group, because economies of scale. And I think if I was traveling solo, I'd probably find a very cheap. If I was traveling solo, I'd probably fly into BWI, which is the local airport, and suck that up rather than hire a car and rely on either public transport or hire a very small vehicle. There's all kinds of different.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of ways you do it, but I don't think it would be like it is a 4-figure sum, but not massively into the 4 figures. And then like a good chunk of that is the flights. And the further out in advance you can book the flights, the cheaper they generally are. The major disadvantage that you face with organizing any trip like this is that in a lot of cases, the ability for the event to announce its date is limited by the university or the organizing party, the hosting party for the venue. So we knew roughly when it would be because it's always roughly the same time of year. So for example, I was able to book annual leave, but I basically booked a 3-week block of annual leave to guarantee I covered the 3 weekends it could possibly be.
Yeah.
And then once I knew when it was, I started canceling the annual leave back down. And yeah, it's not cheap. I super want to be like I want to be clear. This is definitely not a thing that you can do casually, but it's definitely, in my opinion, worth it.
Yeah, because it's one of those things. I mean, I touched on it earlier. 28 Darts later at Royal Holloway, University of London. Sure, it's only 300 miles away from central Scotland. 300 miles? No, a bit further than that. Yeah, but
it's about 500. I think we worked.
Yeah, sorry, it's about 500 miles. And yes, sure, you can get domestic flights, but when you put in the cost of accommodation and transport and messing around with there, I think the closer you get there, and also because it's London in the high season, because their invitational is usually, at least the past 2 years, has been sort of August and July, they've generally had a lot more premiums on it. So you're in the same sort of ballpark once you factor in if you're driving down fuel cost, if you're getting a hotel for 3-4 nights in London, and it just keeps going. So it's one of those things of, yes, it is an investment, but it's not as inaccessible as it would seem.
Yeah, I know it's one thing that when Sarah and I were running the maths for attending Foam Fest this year, we were, I think, conservatively working out something reasonable, £800 for the pair of us, and that involves taking the battle wagon and driving down. We did look at doing such things as flights, and then you've got to add on the entire things. But all the discussion we had about, what's suitable for luggage and whatnot there, or even trains and whatnot there, and then logistics of, cab fares and everything else there, and it genuinely just worked out to be sort of prohibitively expensive. But the idea of going across to another country for several £100 more than that,
it suddenly starts looking, like Foam Fest is a fantastic event.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not making any negative comments about that.
Nor am I, but I'm wanting to kind of put what I say next in context, which is when we're in Scotland and they're in Essex/London, the again, I think Joker touched on this very early on in the conversation. The basic cost to do that is actually not that much more to do the trip to the US, and in some cases, it's logistically easier because we're driving to Glasgow Airport, getting on a plane, arriving at Washington Dulles. The most driving that I'm doing is an hour. If Joker had been with us, we'd have split that driving, or it would have been been actually, in terms of time, it's more expensive, but in terms of logistical ease, it's actually easier.
Yeah, because like one of the reasons we go to Dulles is because of where Spectre and I live. At least we've got the choice of two international airports, Edinburgh and Glasgow. But BWI and Dulles are about the same distance apart as Edinburgh and Glasgow, 60 miles ish. So we could fly from Edinburgh and go direct, but we could also fly to Dulles, and sure, it takes an extra 2 hours, but it's half the price. So doing it for 500, it was like 2022, doing it for 500 and something pounds return versus what United wanted to fly Edinburgh to BWI direct, which was nearing on 1,000. And that's just, the scale of it.
It's certainly something where if you're going to go get a groupies, reduce the costs, get groupies, sort of thing.
Or
do
the utterly insane plan that I was considering, which was to go to a melee-only HVZ, and here's where I do my shout-out to the Universitat Autónoma de Barcelona. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. My apologies to the Catalan community. They've got a melee-only HVZ, which is just humans have pool noodles, zombies don't. Go for it. And it's overnight. And I think when I found out what their date was, I could price it out, fly out from Edinburgh, do it overnight, fly back to Prestwick the next morning, and then die. I think it was maybe 50 quid return. And I was heavily considering it. I was heavily considering it, but now the flights are 200. And I'm just like, wish I'd booked it.
So, because I'm well aware that we have been talking for quite some time, and I would like to just make sure that everybody got an opportunity to highlight their personal moment from the event. What stood out for each of yous? Okay. I think we already know Spectres, but just in case, we'll give him another opportunity if that wasn't quite the highlight of the event for him. But going round, what would be each individual's shining moment from the event?
From the HVZ or Maryland Mayhem? Because the answer is different.
Oh, go on, do both then.
All right, I'm going last.
I'll go. I think it's probably holding the line at the edge of the no blaster zone. Specifically, right before things went tits up. Because, as Spectre mentioned earlier on, I did just turn to him and say, let's buy them some time. We are screwed. Let's just go for it.
You do the job that's in front of you.
Yeah. And despite going arse over tit, I think that's probably where I played my best that day, just because I was using a striker, a dart zone striker, basically just a Nexus, but looks better. And just popping off laser accurate shots at a bunch of powered zombies, like OZs mostly, because they all knew what they were doing and were leading the charges, and I took that as an insult. So we're just targeting them.
So anyway, I started blasting.
Pretty much that. And just the amount of tags I got on them before they decided, yeah, we're going to put you on the floor now, was great. I'm very, very happy with that. But just the being obnoxiously correct for most of the trip was something I was quite happy with as well. But knowing when everyone else was going to die and then going, yeah, let's just do this thing, not suck, would be great.
Yeah, that's the nature of the whole HVZ event. Is you are going to be tagged out. The question is how.
Yeah, I mean, the first one we did, I had a similar moment. And it was when me, you, Kai, Virus, a few others were holding off at the bottom of that hill.
And we all got our own little mini epic last stands holding off the horde, Rambo style. Is it Rambo? The one that was minigun
Yeah,
belts?
that's Rambo.
Yeah. I've never seen it. Of course I've not. But you have that sort of just holding down the trigger. I mean, I was using semi-auto, but it's that sort of moment. From this year though, like my sort of standout moment was getting to see all my friends again, either at the airport sending you off, and there's a picture of this. Am I enough of a sadak to show up at Glasgow Airport at 6 a.m. to give my friends bonus hugs? Yes, I am. And then the next game week, Reaper coming down for that second event, and then just getting yes, I get to see my teammates again. And getting to hear the stories as well, because half the fun is in the storytelling of stuff that you didn't see, because you're never going to see everything. So getting to hear the stories of the other mission groups and going like, oh, well, you were building the still. We were having to, wrangle these cows into a corral, and it's, 5 moderators who are deliberately being obtuse. That sort of thing.
Had to get them moving.
Exactly. I believe that. I mean, that was just entirely made up. I wouldn't put it past some of the UMBC moderators
I'm
to take
pretty
notes.
sure that wrangling cows was one of the mission objectives. I've definitely heard stories that mention cows.
Yeah, it's one of those things like half the fun is in the tale. And crucially, half the fun is in how people tell the tale, because there's no like one true story, and that's really kind of nice.
Reaper, you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Well, it's your turn.
I guess I don't know that I for sure had one standout moment. A lot of the event for me was having a good time with my friends. I definitely enjoyed a lot of the puzzles that I got to solve during the HVZ. There were little crosswords and stuff. Got to actually like make a puzzle for another mission group
zombie
to
you were
solve.
super evil at.
Oh, that yeah, that was a funny moment, I guess. I don't necessarily proud of that because that was me sort of abused. Yeah, no, it was a good weekend overall.
You were also super evil at a zombie?
Yes, we were all super evil at that zombie because UMBC has no minimum spawn distance. And he just kind of walked up to us and was like, hey guys, what's going on? And we're like, well, thunk.
Oh, I thought you meant the car park zombie. Okay.
No, we're not going to discuss the car park zombie because the car park zombie wasn't a player because the car parks were out of play.
Yes.
Moving on. Yeah. So I think that David thinks that my epic moment is me getting tagged, but it's not. My epic moment has to be my first tag as a zombie whilst I was wearing the beta zombie vest and watching that relatively new player go through their 7 stages of grief from oh my game is over to oh no I've just started the new part of the game. I now have this cool thing and I'm gonna go and tag my husband and I'm back at like that kind of roller coaster of emotions that I got to be part of and got to witness was my highlight because I think that really kind of encapsulated everything about humans versus zombies in that 30 seconds of oh yay, that definitely was there. The other thing I want to talk about, which because it's not really my moment, so I don't want to kind of claim it as my moment, but getting to be there while my sister Archer got to be part of the team that won the Maryland Foam tournament, particularly given that last year they'd got taken out of the tournament very early by injury. Watching them kick insane amounts of bottom all the way through the week, all the way through the tournament, and be present, getting to be present when they were announced as the winner. It's her epic moment, but I love the fact that I got to be there for it. I love the fact that I got to see that redemption from the previous year, being knocked out through basically through completely bad luck, and essentially being able to erase that from their personal history, and at this point there will be a photo of Magic Smoke winning the MFT, and I was just I didn't contribute to making it happen. The team did that. My sister did that all on her own, but I am so proud of what she and her team accomplished.
Yeah, sometimes just being on the sidelines and watching the joy that somebody else has in itself is a far bigger payoff.
Somebody who I care about so much, particularly given the history of them being taken out the previous year by injury.
This would be where
meant so
Archer
much.
got her glasses shot off.
Yes.
Yes,
Well, dived behind cover, glasses launched off.
Yeah,
and took fire. So yes, had to be taken.
I remember she did the ad hoc pirate impression that she was doing afterwards. I did see that in a few of the videos that she was doing. She was a very good sport about the whole thing, but to be able to come back from that and make it all the way through and win, yes, you couldn't help but stand at the sidelines and cheer for her. You'd be a very cold-hearted individual to not be happy for her.
I'm just remembering the point in last year's UMBC HVZ where I realized Archer's like wandering around the mission 5 hold and I do that moment of I don't want to move from my line because there's zombies all about me, and I just yell over like, Archer, what are you doing? Pulls off her hat, reveals no headband.
Yeah.
So it's like, right, okay, that one and that one only is a friendly.
Not playing, just watching. And I mean, off the back of that, they managed it with the HVZ as well, because they made it all the way to final stand this year, which particularly, and actually that is something else I want to touch on. This is the first time that she and I have got to play humans versus zombies together as humans since we first met. Because when we met the first time, I had been turned into a zombie and Archer was already a zombie when we met. So we played the entire event together as zombies.
This would be where you were sitting down rather dejected for getting taken out, and she comes along. Yeah, I remember hearing about that one.
And then the year after that, we were in totally different squads, so we didn't get to play together. And then there was the pandemic for 2 years, and then the first UMBC Invitational we attended, they were an OZ, and then the second one they were obviously unable to play due to injury. And this year, finally, we got to be humans and play alongside each other. And you'll be able to see in the November 7 Tactical Solutions photo that Archer is one of the people wearing our very snazzy t-shirts. We should also give a shout out to Sarah from what is Sarah's company called, David? I am
SL Arts, I believe.
S-L Gifts and Crafts is Sarah's little Facebook page for her.
Did a wonderful job with these super cool shirts. Got our logo, our radio IDs, and obviously our call signs on the back. Image here.
Yep. We'll
Um,
make
Not
sure
sure
we
if
put
that
them
came
in.
off on the stream.
It didn't. You became invisible because your back
Excellent.
has no substance, apparently.
Yeah, did a fantastic job in very good time. And everybody that got a t-shirt is, I mean, we're all wearing them. Even Reaper, who we currently cannot see because internet. We're all
Technical
wearing.
issues.
They're both super comfy and super well put together. Could not be happier with the product provided.
With that, we shall essentially draw close to this particular recording, and I'm going to try and sit and edit it. So wish
Makes
me luck.
sense of all the bollocks we've been spouting.
Do you
Luck?
have any other questions you want to ask us before we call this to a close?
Genuinely no. It's last opportunity. As I said, any shout outs to anybody, anything you wanted to say. What are we? You've got 5 minutes. Use it wisely.
Only a couple of people are going to get the reference, but shout out to the All-Mother for just being, like, excellent. in every
Oh,
single-
Hail the
hell.
Most High.
Patron
Oh,
saint
hell
of
to
Whaler
the-
Nerfers.
Shout out to everyone involved in the Maryland Foam Alliance. We've mentioned Boomstick. There's a whole bunch of other people involved, but it'd be remiss of us not to also mention Dot Sweep.
Of course.
Because of all the help that he has given us at various points. And obviously David.
General shout out to everybody who ran with November 7 Tactical Solutions.
Yep,
course, yeah.
to all the irregulars and and also the other players who showed up and were like, "You guys look cool. We're going to hang out with you guys." That was
And all
fun.
the terrified small children.
They very quickly became less terrified when they realized we were on their side.
I know, but it was still funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and shout outs to UMBC, HVZ, David, and the rest of the exec committee for the society for once again putting on a sterling invitational. Cannot speak highly enough of them and strongly recommend that anybody who hasn't taken the opportunity to check them out should do so.
Excellent. So, with that, I'll draw the recording to a close. Thank you to everybody for joining me and for being very patient through the various technical issues that we've been having. It was certainly, well, logistically, it was quite interesting to try and get this recording happening in the first place, trying to match up everybody's calendars there. So, thank you to everybody for joining us, and we'll see you all in episode 6.
I've been Spectre 7. I should go.
Echo 2 to Allcon, Index, Index, Index. Yeah, you don't have a fancy line.
Yeah,
you don't have a fancy
not,
line
you,
yet.
Yeah. Come on. Put some effort in, you two.
No. I was going to say, I was going to sneak it into the N7's team chat, but my phone died in my hand. Was the whole where friend Spectre decided to say I am Spectre N7. I was going to suggest that we all say we are Team N7 and we should go and then disconnect from the call in unison. But no, my phone died.
Okay, so we now have to do that. Okay. Right.
Gelato.
You now have to do that, okay?
Okay, everyone ready?
So
Where's the
do you
button?
want how do you want to do this? Everybody ready to disconnect?
Yep.
Okay. So
Reminder that there is a 2-stage leave meeting. Everyone ready?
Yep.
Thank you all for listening. I've been Spectre 7. I should go.
Yeah, I should go too.
Yeah,
I've been Reprint 7. I should go.
they can't even organize an ending properly.